Hello and welcome again. So we are finally at the moment described completely what the DES is, the internal structure of the data encryption standard. So there are some final words, things that I have to mention that I think they're important here to finish up this topic. So the first thing I want to mention is what is the decryption? Because what we did in the previous videos was talking about the encryption of DES. Now, the decryption of DES is actually almost exactly the same as the encryption. The only difference is now we're going to reverse the key schedule. So what do I mean by that? So if you recall, what we when we look at the DES, the internal structure, you started here with the plain text, and you had initial permutation, and then you have here this round. I remember we talked about in detail about what this round is, the F function, you sort it with the left-hand side and put it on the right, and so on and so forth. And the F function, of course, was internally also a little bit complicated. But we describe all this process, and there were 16 rounds. And every round, so this is round 1 up to round 16, and every round needed a subkey. Now, the process of decryption is this one right here. What you're going to do is the following thing. This part that I have here on the right is the key schedule, but the key schedule in reverse. So you're going to start with the key, which, remember, in our case is going to be a 64-bit key. You're going to fit it into the PC1, which is a permutation, and then it gives you 56 bits here. And instead of starting with transform 1, you start with transform 16. And then after transform 16, you apply transform 15 and then transform 14, so on and so forth until you get to transform 1. Now those keys that are here, the sub keys that are generated from the transforms, you're going to put them in the structure of DES in the rounds. Now the rounds do not change at all. It's exactly the same structure. The only difference is now we're going to start for round 1, we're going to input the last key 16, and so on and so forth. For the next round, for round 2, we'll input key 15 and so on. And so that's how you encrypt. So the decryption. So the decryption, of course, starts with this ciphertext. You apply the initial permutation as always with the DES. You come into the rounds, and round number 1 will get as an input key the K16. So it's basically what we have in here is this picture. All this picture that I'm showing you here is basically just the same picture as the DES for encryption. The only thing that is different here is that we are reversing the key schedule. So we start with transformation 16 and then transformation 15 and so on to fit those keys into the corresponding rounds, and that's how you do the decryption. So to be more specific here, let me look at this picture now. So let's go back to Alice and Bob. So Alice is the one who does the encryption, and Bob is the one who does the decryption. So the encryption that Alice does, let's close the DES for the moment. So look at this black box here. So you put a 64-bit block, the DES encrypts it, gives you a 64-bit block, and that is encrypted with a 56-bit key, which is actually the 56 that is right here is the one that is coming here in this part after you apply the PC1 permutation. So you get the ciphertext Y here. Now the ciphertext, of course, Alice is gonna send it to Bob, and what Bob has to do is just put this in the DES here with the 64th block here, which is the ciphertext, put it into DES, and the only thing that Bob has to do is he has to reverse the key schedule. So they agree on a key already. K is the key for both, and then he only has to reverse the key schedule and put it inside the DES to decrypt that message that was sent to him. So that's basically the decryption algorithm. Now let's talk a little bit about the security of DES. Now DES has been cracked using the brute force attack, and of course what that means is that if you really want to apply cryptography, secure cryptography, you should not use DES alone, because usually not a good idea. There are some variations on what you can do with DES that make it a little bit more secure, but it is better to use other standards. Now, the DES, as I said, has been cracked using brute force attack, and has been cracked by developing specialized computers that are only meant to just crack that DES. Now, the first time that was attempted, I listened to recorder history, it was a deep crack. There was just a machine, a computer, in 1988, but the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The cost of that machine was about $250,000, and the average time that it took to that machine to crack the DES was about 15 days. Now, remember that one of the weaknesses of the DES is that the key space is too little, because the key is 56 bits only. In theory, it's 56. So it's too small. That's why it's vulnerable to brute force attacks. Now, there was another machine later that was built in Germany in the University of Bochum in 2006, and it was called Copacabana. It's a lot cheaper than the deep crack from 1998, and it cost $10,000. And it was a lot better, of course, because the technology has advanced. That's the reason. And the average time for cracking was about 7 days. So the DES is not actually secure, even though we have seen that the inner structure is very convoluted and complicated. It has been possible to crack the DES. Now, what we're going to do later is what are the alternatives. So if this is not the one that is actually secure right now, what are the alternatives of DES? One of them is a variation of DES that is called triple DES, so 3DES. And basically what it does is you apply DES 3 times to the plain text. So you're going to start with the plain text here, X. You put it into DES with a key, and it comes out here the ciphertext. That ciphertext, you're going to fit it again into another DES with another key, and encrypts that even further. And it comes out here the ciphertext and encrypts it again using another DES with another key. So finally, you're going to get the ciphertext out of, in this case. So this is called triple DES. This actually is secure because the key space basically is these 3 combined keys that are here, and that space is a lot larger than only one key. So that's one alternative of the DES. Another alternative, and that's the one that we're going to study later, is this one here, the Advanced Encryption Standard. Now, the Advanced Encryption Standard is also a standard adopted by the U.S. government, and it was adopted in 2001. It was similar to the birth of DES. It was kind of like a request from the U.S. government to give a more secure standard for encryption, because the DES has been already cracked, so there was a need for another standard. So this new standard, which is the Advanced Encryption Standard, is used now today. It is secure so far. So in the next topic that we're gonna study, the next cipher we're gonna study the Advanced Encryption Standard, and this is also a symmetric cipher, which means that the key for encryption and decryption, they're exactly the same key. So we're gonna talk about this later, the Advanced Encryption Standard. So this is gonna be the end of all the DES now, at least for now. We're gonna look a little bit about what is DES in Java and how that works in Java. But we will see that in the next video. So I'll see you later.